Hello guys! I'm so sorry for the delay of my rubric. We had some streaming problems, but I'm here now. It's Wednesday 2 p.m. Well, now 2:19 here in Bulgaria, and you are listening the very first episode of Little Things, extraordinary ordinary rubric about ordinary things. I'm Nati, and today I'll take you to a journey through fascinating history of bicycles. How did people ride the first bikes with no pedals? How did bicycles contribute to better roads? And how did this mean of transportation managed to strip women of their skirts? You'll find out in a few minutes, but first I would like to get you into the bicycle mood by some cool bicycle music. So stay with me and I'll tell you more after a little music break. Hello, welcome back in my rubric Little Things, extraordinary rubric about ordinary things. Today we are talking about bicycles, if you started to listen just now, and you're listening to a bit around a radio in Stara Zagora that is supported by Center of European Initiative and Erasmus Plus program. So let's talk about bicycles now. Bicycle is becoming more and more popular, mainly lately with the environmental consciousness becoming a big subject. A lot of people prefer riding their bikes before struggling with fuel and parking spaces with cars. In fact, over 1 million bikes have been produced every day, what is actually twice as much as the number of cars that have ever been manufactured. Yeah, this is true. Like maybe mainly in Amsterdam that I visited recently. There, it's the most hipster bike city in the world, and basically everyone is riding the bicycle. So bicycle is very popular means of transportation, and it makes perfect sense because bicycles actually save over 238 million gallons of gas each year. So let's start with bicycles' history. It didn't always look like it does. Sorry. Well, under the term of bicycle, we don't only understand the two wheels mean of transportation that we are used to often. So let's talk something about the history of bicycles. Let's start with the name. The word bicycle is created from the French word bicyclette. Well, I had French lessons in my high school, but I'm not exactly sure if I read it right, but it's from French word. And before this name, bicycles were more known as velocipedes. There are many people, even countries, that have claimed the invention of bicycle, but there is no real one person or country that can be credited for this invention, because till today we don't really know who was the first. But the bicycle as we know it today had a lot of ancestors. So let's talk about bikes before bikes. The vehicle's history goes much farther than a lot of us may think. In 1418, an Italian engineer named Giovanni Fontana built the first machine that had any connection to the modern bicycle, but it never really caught on, because his invention had 4 wheels, not 2, and it used gears connected via rope, not chain as we know it now. And unfortunately, there aren't any surviving sketches of this bicycle. Also, allegedly, Leonardo da Vinci designed a bicycle that would have worked, but that claim is surrounded by some controversy, because some of them believed that it was actually his student who made the drawing, not Leonardo da Vinci himself, and other things that it was actually the presenter that told about this Leonardo da Vinci design, who made it discovered in 1960s. So this is not really proven, but there is this theory. In any case, it would be over 400 years before another version of bike would emerge. A wooden bike was once a thing. After this peculiar design, there was wooden bike. Its name was dandy horse or dresserin, what means actually running machines. It was almost entirely made of wood, with no pedals and no gears, just two wheels and a seat. Users have to push this bike by their foot, feet. What was funny because they may feel like Fred Flintstone in his stone car. But this bike is considered the real first official constructed ancestor of today bicycle as we know it today. It was made around 1817. Several thousand copies were built and used. As you can imagine, its popularity dramatically faded when the number of accidents caused by using this bike emerged, because it was very, very heavy and very difficult to ride, especially in turns in street. Because of this, it wasn't only rejected by users, but it was also prohibited by the police. Just much later, in 1863, Frenchmen Pierre Michaud and Pierre Lallemand decided to put a crank drive with pedals on the dandy horse. But pedals weren't on the place they are today, but they were on the front wheel that was also very big, what again made the ride very dangerous. So it wasn't too much of an improvement. And not only dangerous, but investors named their invention very suitingly Bone Shaker, because this bicycle was very uncomfortable to ride. The wooden wheel and iron tires caused a bumpy ride on the streets, which at that time weren't very smooth surfaced. First model of Bone Shaker was presented later in 1868 in Paris, and its weight was unbelievable 80 kilograms. I mean, the model that was actually presented in Paris. So you can imagine that this wasn't the best bike that was ever invented for actual rides. Then in 1870, bike named penny farthing or high wheeler was introduced. Yeah, it's actually its name. It's a very funny name. So the penny farthing was the first model that was actually considered as bicycle. It was made entirely from metal and was far more enjoyable to ride, with the large front wheel making it more comfortable, easier to navigate and more efficient. The pedals were still attached to the front wheel, but because it was much larger, like the front wheel, each rotation took you farther, so it was much faster. The problem was balancing well enough to stay on higher wheel. Even slightest unexpected bump in the road could cause the rider to lose their balance and go tumbling into the street headfirst, what wasn't very pleasant. So again, it was very dangerous and therefore also not used by a lot of people. If while coasting downhill, a rider had to take a precious measurement and place his feet on the handlebars, so he had to have his feet in front, and a lot of times happened that he just fell feet first and caused breaking bones and a lot of accidents. It was also very difficult to stop this bike. So, but this invention, this kind of bicycle, also brought good things, because the introduction of the penny farthing, even if it wasn't very useful or wasn't very safe, is considered it's connected with the birth of cycling as a sport. Okay, now there is time for a little bit of interesting fact. Cyclist Mark Beaumont has smashed the British records for the distance travel on a penny farthing in 1 hour. The 35-year-old Scottish athlete rode 35.27 kilometers on this very uncomfortable and dangerous bike. Now maybe you're asking why these bicycles had such a big front wheel. The answer lies in physics. There are two main reasons for this. First is the speed. Old-fashioned bikes didn't use gears, so the only way to go faster was to have a bigger wheel. Pedals were directly attached to the front wheel, so the bigger the wheel was, the farther a single pedal push propelled you. In bike race, speed was a crucial adventure versus the absurd size. A second reason is comfort. Even if I said it wasn't very comfortable, it was still more comfortable than the first model with the wooden core. So while high wheel bikes were more dangerous, but they had some advantages, all the roads were in poor conditions, as I said, and the large wheel could roll over the potholes and small rocks, and you felt it less. It led to a smoother ride and small wheel bikes with which were often called bone shakers, because of this very uncomfortable way of driving on uneven surfaces. Then bicycle evolved further. In 1880, penny farthing was replaced by the vehicle called safety bike. Other names were also diamond frame or rover, and this time the idea came from England. The creators named John Kemp Starkley, and the safety bike is considered the first commercially successful bicycle because, how its name already suggests, it was much safer and much usable in everyday life. But it was not necessarily entire Starkling's design, this new safety bike. There were some similar models with the use of the drivetrain, but the safety bike was the breaking point of cycling as we know it. It introduced the metal strong and was light enough to make a chain and sprocketers. This finally allowed for smaller wheel size and the multifunction of the revolutions of pedals, so also the ride was safer and much more comfortable. That's why safety bike is marked a shift in bicycles from a dangerous toy to an efficient means of transportation that was available to general public for the first time. Also, together with the normal bicycles, there were also some more peculiar bikes, like unicycle. You may know the unicycles from circuses or street fairs in far past, but people used to use them in everyday life. It is not entirely known when was unicycle first constructed. But many historians agreed that this very interesting type of transportation vehicle was created sometimes after creation of first penny farthing, so sometimes in between 1870s and 1880s. It was because with invention of penny farthing, people realized that they could balance better on larger wheels. So this was also one of the large wheel bicycle, but only with one wheel. Even though the first bicycle as we know it today was created in 1817, as I said, they did not really become popular until the end of the century, when it became cheaper and more accessible to the public. Now enjoy some more music I have for you, and after that I'll tell you something about the impact of bicycles to women and their rights. So stay tuned, stay with me, and I'll see you after a short break. Hello guys, welcome back with my rubric Little Things, extraordinary rubric about ordinary things. You are listening to Beat Around the Bush radio of Stara Zagora, supported by Center of European Initiatives and the Erasmus Plus program. So I told you that now after the break I hope you enjoyed another bicycle song, and now after the break I will tell you something about new woman and feminism that is highly connected to bicycles. What maybe not all of you knew. To women, bicycle was a steed on which they rode into a new world and a new woman. That is the truth. Social reformer and feminist Susan B. Anthony once said that the invention of modern bicycle has done more to emancipate women than anything else in the world, and she called it a freedom machine. Actually, her quote literally sounded like this: "Let me tell you what I think about bicycles. I think it has done more to emancipate women than anything else in the world. I stand and rejoice every time I see a woman ride by on a wheel. It gives a woman a feeling of freedom and self-reliance." This enthusiasm had its strong reason. Before the bicycle came along, women were expected to progress on foot, in carriages or on horseback, always well supervised by men. And how you traveled denoted your class, because walking the street by feet back then was highly suspicious, while you were considered either from from a lower class, or being a prostitute. So the freedom bicycle riding gave women the way to a new term, new woman, who didn't necessarily want to have children, be deprived of a career, or have no political voice. But despite of this, bicycle for women had a rude start. First, women weren't even allowed to use bicycle. First, bicycles were only for men. One of the reasons was that it was impossible to ride it sideways, and as we know, women used to wear these long skirts, and it didn't really allow them to ride properly. But then, when the invention of safety bike I told about before came, it changed everything. Its wheels weren't the same size, and its tires were inflated, and it was deemed appropriate for children, and so women also said that it's also appropriate for them. So in 80s, 90s, women were finally allowed to use bikes. But again, it wasn't without restriction. People saw bikes as a sexual threat. There was real concern that straddling a bicycle, saddle combined with the motion required to propel a bicycle, would lead to sexual arousal in women, what was in those times considered a bad thing, an inappropriate thing for a lady. So women bicycles were saddleless and with little or no padding, and high handlebars to reduce the risk of arousal. So this is a very fact that we may not comprehend today, but that was the way they were thinking back. Women were also informed that bicycle face, what was actually the term, for tense expression of concentration required for dodging traffic, would ruin their beauty, and then the whole practice would make them boggled from too much paddling. But there is also a bright side to this general opinion, because bicycles actually played a big role in women's sexual liberation. Suddenly it was much easier to have intercourse with a person that lived farther away, so people didn't notice what you are doing, and it didn't ruin females and women's reputation. Second big change that bicycle brought into 19th century women's life was the fact that it helped to get rid of long restrictive skirts. So it stripped women of their skirts, because while many of them were perfectly happy cycling decorately in ankle skimmers, some of them found it particularly uncomfortable. The beginning of the end of restrictive skirts was obvious even in 1868 in the earliest women's cycling race in history, which took place in France. It's recorded that many of the women wore scandalously short skirts to help them to pedal more effectively and avoid accidents. The accident issue was a real one, at least until 1890s, when one brave woman, the English rider Helena Swanwick, point blank refused to wear a skirt again after a ride of which she declared after a bike accident was a horrible experience. So the solution were cycling bloomers or a bicycle costume, as it was known at the time. They still went to the ankles and were quite voluminous, but they allowed more movement and were far safer. So this is actually the first time that the women wore, we can call it trousers, even if it looked more like skirt. However, the trend for bicycle outfits met with approbation from many parts of society, of course. The New York Times reported in the 1890s that while Parisian women were fast getting into the bicycle costumes, only one woman had dared to wear bloomers while riding her bicycle in Newport, and she only did it at night. So there were a lot of sketches in New York Times and New York magazines with expressing women who were like cycling and wearing this kind of trousers as ridiculous subject, a subject of jokes, like women who left their husbands home with children and they were in meantime like riding bicycles around or fighting for their voting right. Still, several men appeared in favor of this new invention, though perhaps not in a feministic way. The Atlantic reports on a remarkable document from 1897 in which the gentleman W. H. Lambton gives an opinion on various U.S. cities based solely on the shapeliness of the legs and ankles of the lady cyclists, complete with illustrations. None of this negativity stopped women from actually fighting for their rights with help of bicycles. Suffragettes in particular would ride around on their bicycles with transparent banners, votes for women in 1910s, and their movements even had its own special bicycle. In 1909, the advertisement appeared on the pages of several magazines, including magazine Votes for Women. Women rights activists weren't always totally in favor of bicycles, though. Charlotte Smith of Lawrence County, who undertook huge campaigns on behalf of working women decided that bicycles were the creation of the devil and would hire campaigners to impede any woman who was riding the bicycle. So there was something from the history of bicycle connected to women's rights. And now I'll just like to share with you some interesting facts before my first episode of this rubric Little Things will come to its end. So, bicycle actually impacted in a big way state of roads. Paved roads became mainstream not because of automobiles, but because of bicycles. While cars could go across cobblestone fairly well, bicycles could not. The improvement of roads was first lobbied for and paid for by cycling organizations. In the UK and the US, cyclists lobbied for better road surface for a full 30 years, before motoring organizations did the same. Cyclists were ahead of their times. While railway took off from 1840s, the coaching trade died, leaving roads almost unused and in poor condition. Cyclists were the first vehicle operators in a generation to go on long journeys town to town, so cyclists helped save many roads from being grabbed up. Another interesting thing about bikes is that they were first fighters against speeding. Bicycle was involved in a first speeding charge. The cyclist wasn't the one that was speeding, but it was the means of transportation for a policeman who actually caught the speeder, Englishman Walter Arnold, whose speed was 12.87 kilometers per hour. That was 3.22 kilometers an hour faster than those days' town limits. Bicycles were also involved in war operations. During World War II, Japanese invaded most of Malaysia while riding their bicycles. And now some bicycles, world's best. Actual world's fastest bicycle was customed and designed for 1 million British pounds, and it took 4 years to make. Has a theoretical top speed of 250 meters per hour and has such a high gear ratio that it could travel 47 meters for every turn of the pedals. Longest tandem bicycle, that is the bicycle who has more than one seat, so like behind each other. The longest tandem bike ever built had 35 seats and was about 18 meters long. The world's most expensive bike was a Trek Madone, or the butterfly bike that was designed by artist Damien Hirst and was auctioned for 50,000 American dollars at Sotheby's. I can tell you, I saw the bicycle. You wouldn't buy it for $500. It really wasn't nice. That it had a lot of butterflies on it. It looked like a child's bike. World's largest bicycle, a rideable bicycle, has a wheel with diameter of 3.3 meters and was built by Lidis Hans from Germany. And there was also design for the world's fastest bicycle before the one actual fastest. And fastest measured speed of driving bicycles on a flat surface was 133.75 kilometers per hour. Yeah. So it was not actually as much as the actual design was theoretically supposed to get. Alright, that's all from me today, and I hope you enjoyed my rubric and also that you learned something interesting about bicycles that will never allow you to look at them the same way as you did before. Have a nice day, and if you want to hear something interesting about bets, which I will be talking about next week, be with me, next week at Wednesday, as today, at 2 p.m. Bulgarian time. Thanks for listening, and again, have a nice day. Bye bye.